A lot of requests for a full review on this one, guys. Back in November of 2023, Jim Beam unveiled a decade-old cask-strength rye whiskey aged in a distinctive type of rickhouse, a unique escalator-style warehouse for that matter, before being bottled cask-strength and unfiltered. Some people have called this Booker's Rye Light. That's a bold statement. Let's try it, let's compare it. It's the Mash and Drum. What's up, folks? I'm Jason C from the Mash and Drum, and welcome back to the show. Like, subscribe, and help me hit that milestone of 100,000 subscribers here in 2024. Now, Old Overholt Extra Aged Cask Strength Rye is a new expression from the makers of the oldest continually produced and maintained whiskey in America, marking the first publicly available cask strength expression from the brand since the mid-20th century. Now, this new release is an ode to a whiskey that has kept Overholt at the forefront of American rye for more than 200 years. Old Overholt was, at one time, one of the most respected and highly regarded whiskeys in the United States, said to have once been the preferred drink of Ulysses S. Grant and John Henry Doc Holliday. It is the only American whiskey brand that retains undeniable ties to the old Monongahela style of rye whiskey. I can't believe I just said Monongahela correct. I just said it again correct. All right, I'm gonna stop now. While the epicenter of the American whiskey world stands today in Kentucky, it wasn't always that way. Early immigrants from Europe settled in places like New England, New York, Virginia, and Pennsylvania, distilling whatever excess crops they had. Now, one such German immigrant was Henry Oberholzer, who landed in West Overton in western Pennsylvania around 1800. Oberholzer was a Mennonite farmer, and when he came to the United States, he actually Americanized his name and changed Oberholzer to Overholt. He also began distilling rye grain that was plentiful in that area. By 1810, his son Abraham Overholt, at the ripe old age of 26, turned this little farm distillery into a legitimate business, distilling 50,000 gallons of rye per year. Now, by mid-century, it had become one of the top whiskey producers in the United States, incorporated as A. Overholt and Company. They were also able to produce 860 gallons of rye whiskey per day at the West Overton Distillery, which still stands to this day. By 1888, the company had officially taken the Old Overholt name, and Abraham's famous portrait was finally added to the bottle. Fast forward to 1986, that's when Old Overholt was licensed by James B. Beam Distilling Company, and even though rye whiskey was still mostly out of favor in America, it made a massive comeback thanks to the cocktail culture, as bartenders fell in love with classic pre-prohibition cocktails, which traditionally had used rye whiskey. All right, let's get into the details. Old Overholt Extra Aged Cask Strength Rye was barreled in the winter and autumn seasons of 2012 and laid down in one of the few remaining escalator warehouses in Claremont, Kentucky, which is Warehouse V. This style of warehousing lends itself to more consistency and a gentler mellowing process over time, which was used to curate these barrels for this release. It's bottled at 121 proof and it retails for about $100. So from what I read and found online, an escalator style warehouse literally has escalators in it that's moving the barrels around the rickhouse to maintain that consistency. Think about what Maker's Mark does as they move their barrels from the top of the rick to the middle of the rick to the bottom of the rick, all throughout the warehouse as their bourbon ages. It gives them more consistency and a kind of a mellower aging process. When I read that, I'm like, I gotta see that. They actually have escalators in there? That's crazy. All right, let's try it. Here we go. Now, I've had Booker's Rye a couple times. I've been lucky enough to have Booker's Rye. This doesn't smell like Booker's Rye, but to me, this is very cinnamon clove heavy. I love the clove note in here. I really do like that note in a rye. It's peppery. You do get a touch of oak here, but it's not overpowering at all. I think that escalator style rickhouse and how it kind of mellows everything out. It's not like you're getting an oak punch like you do in a Booker's or something like that. This is definitely, the oak punch here is definitely a lot more mellow. Yeah, a lot of vanilla, caramel. I mean, it's a very sweet rye, yet it does have these peppery, cinnamon clove notes that kind of balance it out. All right, here we go, let's try it. I like the palate a lot. This really does pack a punch. Yeah, you cannot hide from that 121 proof, especially on the first sip. A lot of black pepper, just a huge punch of rye spice here. Yeah, second sip, it really does mellow out. A lot of that vanilla character does come through here, a little bit of the caramel. I get all the baking spice and the rye spice very much on the back end of this one. It's got a long, lingering finish, which you guys know I love. That's probably my favorite part of this right now. I'm actually surprised how mellow it is, especially on the front and mid palate. I like to leave a little bit of whiskey right on the front of the palate to see if I get any, you know, some of like those tingling effects that you get on a high proof whiskey. This hits the palate pretty mildly, but it does bring you a good amount of flavor here. Again, the cinnamon, the clove, and the rye spice is all on the back end, but up front, it's a lot sweeter. You get that nice little punch of vanilla, you get some caramel, I think there's some brown sugar there too. A hint of an oak profile, not a lot of oak here to me. It's a really nice sipping rye whiskey. The beauty of this is the finish. I mean, the finish has everything going for it right now. I've been waiting to get a little bit of a citrus note here on this rye whiskey, and I finally just got it. I think as you sip this, you let this sit on your palate a little bit, get a slight hint of like an orange here, like an orange peel. It's a really nice rye for $100. Jim Beam does tend to release whiskeys that for every year its age, it's about $10. So 10 years, $10 for every year, that's about $100. Let's compare this to a newer rye whiskey release that's cask strength that people seem to love, a little bit cheaper than this, and see how it stacks up. And it's right here. If you guessed we were gonna compare it to the Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Rye, then you're right. Now, Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Rye whiskey, again, I think it's said to be about 7 to 8 years. So not that far underneath the old Overholt. And this particular single barrel comes in at a hearty 136.5 proof. So it's got some proof on it. It's also got a little bit of color on it too. The Jack Daniel's a little bit darker. Let's go into the nose here. Man, when you nose these, the Jack Daniel's is easily a lot sweeter. I think that sweet component, that brown, this is way more brown sugary than the old Overholt is. Again, they're trying to mimic that Monongahela style rye from Pennsylvania, which is a very spicy type of rye whiskey. And I think they've kind of hit that part of it, especially on the back end, maybe not so much the front and the mid palate, because like I said, it is kind of a mellower experience, you know, when you first taste it. However, the finish on this thing is peppery, it's cinnamony, and it's got some clove aspects to it as well. All right, let's try the Jack Daniel's. It's a different type of spice that I get on the back end of this. It's a sweeter overall whiskey, but compared to the old Overholt, I think the old Overholt has more of those conventional super spicy rye type notes, even though it's got a sweet palate up front. Both of them are great. It's an interesting comparison when you go back and forth on them, because I think they are very different. The Jack Daniel's is what, about 70 bucks. Jack Daniel's always kills it with great values. However, it is younger than the old Overholt at 10 years. So let's do a quick final breakdown on the old Overholt 10 year. All right, final breakdown on the old Overholt 10 year cask strength rye whiskey from Jim Beam. Price about $99.99, just call it $100. Secondary market value, you don't really see these marked up. Availability on these is, I'm not really sure how many times they're gonna be releasing this. Did it release late last year and now it's gone? Are they still hanging around? Let me know down in the comments. But I'll say, just from a Jim Beam standpoint, I'll say availability on this, even though it's a special release, was probably average. Value for this one, a 10-year-old rye whiskey at cask strength, 121 proof in today's market, right at $100. I'm not gonna say it's a great value, because I think the Jack Daniel's is probably a better value considering what you get. So I'll say that the value here is even. I'll say it's good for what it is. Most I'd pay here would absolutely be retail, so I'll stick at that $100 price point. As far as alternatives, we just tried one of them in the Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Barrel Proof Rye. You also have the Sagamore Cask Strength, which is a mix of 95.5 rye and a low rye mash bill. You have the Templeton 10-year cask strength rye whiskey as well that's out there. You have the Rossville Union 95.5 rye at cask strength from MGP or Ross and Squibb. You have Rare Breed rye and countless of other cask strength ryes you can utilize to go against this. And as far as a recommendation, is it a skip? Is it a try before you buy? Is it a buy, or is it a buy and back it up? For me, this one is just gonna be, I'll just stick at buy. I don't think it's that amazing that you would have to go run out and back this one up. You have to like really spicy, peppery ryes, especially on the finish. If you like that type of style, if you've had Pennsylvania style rye whiskeys before and you like that type of profile, then this is gonna be right up your alley. If you're looking for a sweeter rye, like the Jack Daniel's or even the Sagamore cask strength rye, then this one might be along the lines of a try before you buy. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed the full review for the Old Overholt 10-year cask strength. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that subscribe button below. Please hit the like button, and if you haven't yet, follow me on Instagram. Let me know down in the comments what you think about this one. Was this one kind of one of your favorites late last year? Do you still have one now? You still sipping on it? Let me know down in the comments. And as I always say, it's not about the whiskey, it's the people you share it with. Cheers. I'll see you next time right here on The Mash and Drum. Cheers, folks.